Welcome to the Bible for Kids podcast. I'm Mike Nawrocki.
And I'm Amy Parker. And today we have a very special, a very exclusive guest, an internationally known superstar, maybe, a screenwriter, professor of animation, and author, my very own co-host, Mike Nawrocki.
Are you talking about me?
We're going to talk about his continuing series, The Dead Sea Squirrels, but we always like to start the Bible for Kids podcast with a Bible verse. So, Mike, you got a verse for us?
I do, and this is actually from one of the Squirrels books upcoming. It's God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And that's in Matthew 5:7 of the New Living Translation.
And that, I believe, appears in book 5. So apparently we're talking about mercy or something, but we're going to get into that.
Yep.
And Mike, since you're the co-host of this show, you probably don't really need an introduction. But just in case anyone out there didn't know, Mike is the co-creator of VeggieTales and the voice of
Larry the Cucumber.
having written many of the songs and scripts of the VeggieTales episodes that we all love. But his latest project is The Dead Sea Squirrels, which we've kind of talked about when it was first getting started, but today we're going to dig into that more. It's kind of taken on a life of its own. So that is our topic for today, The Dead Sea Squirrels. And that's an idea, Mike, that has been a long time in the making. Tell us how these came about.
Sure. Well, I had originally conceived of the idea, over 10 years ago. And one of the issues that we had while I was still at Big Idea with VeggieTales, one of the issues we had with VeggieTales from the very beginning is we did not want to portray Jesus as a vegetable. We were very sort of irreverent with VeggieTales, and kind of the idea was there's this ensemble group of characters who are putting on a Bible story, and we felt like we could tell Old Testament stories, New Testament stories, but as soon as we portrayed Jesus as a vegetable, it felt like, that would be crossing a line theologically. Yeah. And so
definitely theologically.
Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of come up with an idea of an offshoot, not an offshoot from VeggieTales, but like a whole new series where we could really freely tell New Testament stories. And so this idea of bringing instead of going back to Bible days, bringing characters from that time, fictional characters from that time forward in history, to recount those stories in the first person, that was the initial thought, and sort of like Encino Man, if you had seen that movie a long time ago.
That's a throwback.
Where they dig up, a guy encased in a block of ice. What would it look like to have these characters come forward in time? And so this old Jewish couple, Merle and Pearl Squirrel, who Merle built a little raft. He'd always wanted to see the Dead Sea because he had heard you can't sink. So he and his wife Pearl, they were in their retirement years, took a little raft down and visited the Dead Sea. And after an afternoon there, Pearl finds that Merle has no escape plan. She thought they'd just take the raft back, but the river only flows one way. Right. And so they're hot, they're salty, they're thirsty, and they're stuck at the Dead Sea, and they're being baked by the sun, and they need to get some shade. So they find some caves nearby, and they go to get some shade. And Merle, always the explorer, decides to check out the cave against Pearl's warnings, and 2,000 years later, they're petrified, salt encrusted and dehydrated, and they're found by a little boy in the modern era, and they come back to life.
That's awesome. And so the little boy's dad is an archaeologist, right? So that's how. So
that's right. Yeah. Michael's the little boy, and his dad is an archaeologist, and so he's on a summer dig, and Michael is with him, and he brings his best buddy Justin, and they are exploring a cave one day against Dad's wishes. Dad told them to never go into a cave without an experienced guide, but they're two adventurous 10-year-old boys, and they go in there, and that's when Michael spots these two salt-encrusted, dehydrated squirrels, and he thinks they're the coolest thing ever. Justin thinks they're disgusting, but Michael, just wants to keep them as souvenirs, so he stuffs them in his backpack and takes them back home with him to Tennessee. And initially they're just lifeless and petrified, and he sets them up on his windowsill with his window open one night, and it rains, and they come back to life. They rehydrate, and the next day he finds Merle and Pearl, an old Jewish couple who have a lot of stories and wisdom to tell from their days during the time of Christ.
Yeah, and adventures ensue.
That's right.
And the last time we talked about the Dead Sea Squirrels, the series was pretty new. I think there were maybe 2 books that had just released, but now there are 6 books that are already out there. Can you tell us a little about each one?
Sure. Yeah. So every book has a core value at the heart of it. We mentioned, that first one was about obeying your parents, and then the second one, oh boy, I'm drawing a blank on the second one at this point in terms of the core value. But, you get into 3, which is about diligence. 4 is about telling the truth. 5 is about mercy. 6 is about patience. So each one of the books has a core value that wraps around into a full story within that book. But there's an ongoing saga throughout the books. So there's a drama ensuing as the man in the suit and sunglasses is, who works for a collector of ancient artifacts, follows them back from Israel to Tennessee and is sort of after the squirrels. And so you have this continuing storyline that kind of weaves through the series from book to book. So each book kind of has a little cliffhanger that leads you on to the next book. But it's just a lot of fun being able to develop these characters and these stories and, be able to tell, great lessons for kids in the midst of it.
Yeah. And so this is a series that you would recommend starting with book 1 and then reading through in order. Yeah.
You really do need to read them through in order just because of that, the
cliffhanger.
And the story spines that go through. And speaking of story spines, the number are on the spine of the book, of which order they go in.
Yeah. Always loved that. And
yeah.
I always had mine in order. I usually did them in alphabetical order by author, but that's a different story. So as a mom, too, talking about those core values, I love that each one has a core value. It's printed on the back of the book just above the barcode. So you've got the price and the core value, the most important parts of the book, right?
There you go.
So I saw kindness, obedience, forgiveness, self-control. Do you choose the core value first? Or maybe if your kid comes home and really needs to hear about a core value, do you go in and write that book? Or does the plot come first? What's the process for writing these?
Yeah, I think the value grows out of the story. And so, the very first book, was about, Michael being in this cave against his dad's wishes. And so, part of that central plot was the conflict and the character kind of development that he needed to do was about learning how to obey his dad and listen to his dad. And so it kind of grew out of that plot element. But I will say it sometimes it happens the other way where it's like, okay, well, how do I really wanted to talk about a beatitude here. I want to talk about, blessed are the merciful. So, what could that look like, as a story? And with book 5, Tremendous Trouble, where Mr. Nemesis, who's the family cat, devises a plan to get rid of the squirrels. He himself gets into a pickle, and the squirrels, need to help him out of it, and kind of show mercy to him. So that one was kind of fun, just developing it from the value out. But it happens both ways. I think every story. Every good story, I think, has a theme. Every story has something to say. Yeah. And so, it's so helpful to be able to point back to the authority of that theme. It's like, okay, well, why should we be merciful? And it's because, God first showed mercy to us. And so, it's, whether you're starting with a theme or whether the theme is kind of growing out of the story, it's just really wonderful to be able to point back to the biblical truth of that theme.
Yeah, and every one of these I'm seeing has a Bible verse in the beginning of it. So, so parents could use that Bible verse, let their kids read the story, and talk about even that Bible verse in terms of a really fun story.
Yeah. And the neat thing I think about Squirrels is it's not only the Bible verse, but we have a chapter or two in each book called Squirrel's Eye View, where the squirrels are actually relating the issue that Michael's going through to something they saw Jesus or the apostles talk about in the first century. So we're actually going back to the Bible story where where that value is conveyed. And so in Tremendous Trouble, they're remembering that one time that when they were on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, collecting walnuts and watching Jesus give the Sermon on the Mount. So kids are getting a Bible story in there in context and how that relates to their life in the modern day.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's probably a great place for us to take a break. So we will be right back on the Bible for Kids podcast. The Quiet, Crazy Easter Day. Here's some fun for the little ones. Have you ever thought that maybe the first Easter wasn't so quiet and peaceful? The Quiet, Crazy Easter Day by Jill Roman Lord imagines the crazy celebration that might have occurred when Jesus arose. A festive day filled with chirps and croaks, shouts and coos, and loop-de-doos. Grab your little ones and learn how you too can shout and sing and spread the news that Jesus is alive. Available everywhere books are sold.
The Way to the Savior. The Way to the Savior by Jeff and Abby Land is a great way to celebrate the Easter season as a family. Explore 8 aspects of Easter: forgiveness, hope, trust, thanksgiving, love, commitment, obedience, and Jesus' last days. This collection of 40 devotions leading up to Easter contains great discussion questions, prayers, and fun activities your family will enjoy revisiting year after year. Available everywhere books are sold.
Mike Nawrocki, co-creator of VeggieTales, is back. In his hilarious new chapter book series, 10-year-old Michael and his friend Justin sneak into the Dead Sea caves near the archaeological dig where Michael's dad is working. Michael finds a couple of 2,000-year-old squirrels petrified in sea salt. Hijinks ensue as Michael tries to bring them back to the U.S., hidden in his backpack. What Michael thinks are just cool souvenirs may turn out to be something much more. The Dead Sea Squirrels series is humorous, fun, and filled with character-building lessons. As co-creator of VeggieTales, co-founder of Big Idea Entertainment, and the voice of the beloved Larry the Cucumber, Mike Nawrocki has been dedicated to helping parents pass on biblical values to their kids through storytelling for over 2 decades. To find your own Dead Sea Squirrels, head over to Tyndale.com, Amazon.com, or your favorite bookstore.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids, and Amy is interviewing me.
We have a very special guest today, Mike Nawrocki, and we were talking about the Dead Sea Squirrels, which are just so adorable and so funny. Although I'm kind of taking issue with Mr. Nemesis, the cat, being a bad guy. But you're allergic to cats, right?
Yeah, I'm allergic to cats, so cats are good bad guys.
Yeah. But on Tremendous Trouble, he kind of looks like the Abominable Snowman. Like, he's a really scary looking
sort of
bad
the Abominable Snowman meets Grumpy Cat. So, yeah. No, Mr. Nemesis is such a fun character. He's the family cat in the Gomez household. And, he's used to all the attention. And Jane, Michael's little sister, kind of treats him like a big baby, dresses him up and all that. And he endures that.
Which he loves. Yeah.
Well, not really. And so, but, when the squirrels come home, they become like the beloved family, guests and kind of displace Mr. Nemesis. So it becomes his life's mission to get rid of them, to off them.
Rid the squirrels.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
So I was impressed as I was looking through this information. You can see the entire first chapter on Tyndale's website. Usually I'm happy to see, like, if you go to Amazon, you can see inside and they'll give you a few random pages or whatever. Uh-huh. But if parents or leaders or listeners, if you want to go to Tyndale.com and just search for the Dead Sea Squirrels, you can see the entire first chapter of each of these books. Even read the first chapter with your kiddos and see how it engages them. And so, Mike, what ages are these for again?
They're early readers. So depending on when your child starts to read, some kids as early as kindergarten, preschool, even up through 4th or 5th grade. So the main characters in here are 5th graders.
Okay.
So 10 years old.
Yeah.
But I've heard from parents and kids, who are 11, 12 that really love the book. So they're for older kids they become an easy read. And then younger kids, it's a little bit more challenging for them, and gets them into reading. But I think that the stories are fun enough to engage kids of all ages. So.
Yeah, well, and even if not, I mean, there are all these little great illustrations throughout, and it's not just like one per chapter opener. Like, this one even has. Well, I guess this is the beginning of all the ones after chapter 1, but it has like a little comic strip series to start it off. Or graphic, I guess they don't call them comic strips anymore, do they? Graphic novel kind of thing.
Graphic novel sort of thing. Yeah. So we started off with the origin story. Every book has the origin story, just to sort of orient the reader as to, okay, where do these squirrels come from again? So we have that. But Luke has done just such a great job. And then Libby, who is, sort of the art director over at Tyndale, Luke and then Luke is the illustrator. But they're just such fun illustrations. And because I, developed this initially as an animated series, I just wanted to make sure, the character designs were done and they were in a kind of formatted in a way to where if, when we go to that next step to animation, a lot of that work is already done.
Will transfer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was looking at your reviews, and one stood out to me. One reviewer said, "I bought this book for my 12-year-old brother." So 12 is a couple of years over the intended age range for these. Yep. But I bought this book for my 12-year-old brother who loves reading. Surprisingly, my 11-year-old sister grabbed it and started reading it. And this is amazing since she never picks up books on her own. She devoured it and asked for more. I even got the audiobook, and the kids love these stories over and over. Do I understand why? No. But on their authority, the books are funny. If it can get a reluctant reader reading, 5 stars. So 11 to 12, that's 2 years over the age range, 2 years over the age of these characters. And, kids are the most honest reviewers. So have you had other feedback from readers? Have you heard from readers yet after 6 books are out there now? What's the response been?
Yeah, it's been really cool. In fact, I got one the other day. I have to from a parent of a younger reader just saying, hey, this is wonderful because, I was looking for something with great values for my kids, but that could also engage them as a reader and develop a love for reading.
Yeah.
And my child has really, just really loved the series and can't wait for, the next book and the next book. And so, and as a parent, that's such a joy for me to hear because I remember my kids at that age and knowing that they were engaged in a book series and loving loving the characters, loving the stories, but then, just starting to experience the joy of reading and taking that step as lifelong readers, that's really cool. So I love hearing that.
Yeah. And you don't find that in everything you read. You have to find, I tell people when they're having trouble getting their kids to read or whatever, find what interests them, find what they love and let them start there. Don't force them to read something that, I know there's school assignments and stuff, but as they're
third grade, here you read Anna Karenina. You're gonna love this.
Yeah, it's great. But yeah, just let them find something in the subject matter that interests them, and then let them read what they love. That will instill the love of reading. The rest of it will come later. But
yeah,
another person mentioned that there's definitely a VeggieTales flavor. So, and the most impressive thing to me was that you got a positive Kirkus review. Listeners, if you're not familiar with Kirkus, they are hard on us authors sometimes.
I got two positive Kirkus reviews.
I think I've had one. And I don't know, I'm kind of getting the feeling, they don't review or like a lot of Christian books, or if it's overhanded. Sorry, Kirkus, maybe I'm misreading. But anyway, it says the Squirrels will make kids, quote, undoubtedly laugh out loud with plenty of humor to tickle young readers, unquote. And it's recommended for fans of Big Nate and Stink. I haven't heard of Stink, but I know who Big Nate is. So parents, if your kids are reading these books, this is about where the squirrels are. So the question, how do you do that? How do you deliver consistent quality humor for kids? You've been doing it for 20 some odd years now. And it's not easy. It's not as easy as you make it look.
Well, thank you. No, I kind of have that sense of humor, that kind of translates to kids and adults, So, and I found this writing with Phil for VeggieTales. It was just very natural for both of us, to kind of write stuff that, that engages both kids and adults. And so, so that's kind of what I've kept on doing with Squirrels. I think, at the heart of what I want to do as a storyteller is tell stories that can be a tool for parents to help pass on biblical values to their kids. So making sure that kids really get what the lesson is, but then beyond that, you just have a lot of fun. And so I think that then translates to kids, to to tweens, and then on to adults. And so I think you can be fun with character in a way that's just appealing to people of all ages. And so as long as it's appropriate. And so that's what I love doing with the characters that I write.
Yeah, well, define appropriate, because I was reading one where he's got like stones in his nose and he's picking the stones out of his nose.
Yeah, that's appropriate for kids. That's exactly.
But really, I mean, my 26-year-old was reading it last night, and he picked that one out as a funny, part of the story to share. So yes, the humor seems to be universal. But they're not just funny. There's, of course, the core values in each. And then I love at the end of each one, you also add in Dr. Gomez's historical handbook.
Yeah.
And that tells the story of the actual Dead Sea Scrolls, not squirrels,
where
but the scrolls.
The pun is based off of,
yes.
Right?
And how they were discovered also by a 15-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So you actually are able to also weave in some biblical history, which we talked about. But is that, so the biblical history or the Bible story, I guess, so to say, is that in every single book? How does that work?
Yeah, it is. And so what happens is, Michael will encounter kind of a dilemma, whether it's a personal, issue, a moral dilemma, in the course of being a fifth grade kid. And the Squirrels then address that dilemma in the form of a story, a recounting of a biblical story. And so whether it's, I mentioned tremendous trouble, it's about mercy. And so they'll remember their days, watching Jesus at the Sea of Galilee, talk about, the Beatitudes and blessed are the merciful, or whether it's Paul in prison, writing to a church about diligence, which is another issue that comes up in one of the books. So so we'll flash back to a segment called Squirrels' Eye View, where they remember these things happening when they were alive at that point. So so each book has a specific Bible lesson, Bible story in it in the context of the larger story of what Michael's going through in that episode.
Yeah. So they have a core value, a Bible story, a little bit of archaeology, lots of humor, and awesome illustrations. So in these little books, they are just really jam-packed, full of goodness. I think we probably need to take another break, but we will be right back on the Bible for Kids podcast. Where is Wisdom? Where is Wisdom takes us on a creative tour through the beautiful truths found in Job 28. I don't know about you, but the book of Job can be a challenging read. Yet Scott James gets to the heart of the poem that Job 28 is. He so simply yet creatively shares the message that the greatest treasure is found in God and in the wisdom that He alone can provide. A truth that everyone needs to hear.
Don't forget to remember. Ellie Holcomb's newest children's title, Don't Forget to Remember, is the perfect Easter gift for your kids this year. Teach them how to look around and find reminders of God's great love for them everywhere they go. And similar to her first book, Who Sang the First Song, Ellie has a song to go along with Don't Forget to Remember, which you'll enjoy singing as you flip through the beautiful pages of the book. Both the song and the book are available wherever music and books are sold.
Okay, favorite listeners, we are always giving something away. Free books, yay! So to win, check out our instructions on Instagram and Facebook at The Bible for Kids. And just look for The Bible for Kids podcast at Google or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast.
And today I'm interviewing my co-host, Mike Nawrocki, about his extensive series now, The Dead Sea Squirrels. So working in animation all those years, I have to ask, and now you're a professor of, is it film and animation?
film and animation. I am. At Lipscomb, the film department and the animation department are in the same school. Yep.
So do you see these playing out as animation in your head? Are they, I know you said you tried to get the illustrations kind of the same, but as you're writing, is there sort of this little screen that pops up above your head in a bubble that is like them acting out? Does that help you write them, or does it stump you, or both? Or?
Oh, well, it does. From a story structure standpoint, I actually design these just because I've written for screen for so long. That's kind of how I think through story structure. Yeah. And so as I was structuring all the books, that's kind of what I had in mind. And then the challenge for me was, once I had the story laid out, was getting in and writing. When you write for screen, everything needs to be written visually. You can't write internal dialogue in a story in a script. In a screenplay, because you have to see what as an audience. You either have to see or you have to hear somebody say it.
Unless you're Shakespeare.
Yeah. Well, or if you're, a lot of times that's the great thing about music in animation, because you can actually, convey, kind of that,
emotion
soliloquy, through music and what you're thinking through music.
Yeah.
So, but generally, you have to see it or you have to say it, and so then writing through, it was actually really fun for me to be able to do that, to be able to write internal dialogue and kind of switch my brain off, and switch it in a different direction.
Yeah.
And now that I've been coming back, so now that I've been wrapping back around and writing the screenplays based on each of the books. Then I have to figure out, okay, now that I've written this with internal dialogue, how do I communicate that now visually, in a screenplay? And so that's been another kind of fun challenge. But one of the things that I'd love to do in animation too, as I'm developing these, is incorporate music. Into the animated series, and so which you obviously can't do in books, but that'll be a lot of fun to do.
Okay, so I was going to ask this question. You're talking about screenplays. Are we going to see these animated later down the road?
Oh, yeah, that's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah.
So I've
will Merle and Pearl do a duet?
Sure, why not? That's right.
You said songs, and
oh yeah. Well, and I think the perfect place for the songs would be these, Squirrel's Eye View. Kind of these, as they recount, the biblical stories. To be able to do that in song, I think would be super fun. So So I've been cooking up some ideas there, but yeah, certainly that's been the plan, and what I continue to hope is that the little guys will be animated soon.
Well, and two, if you do the Squirrel's Eye View in a song, you're telling kids a Bible story in a song, and of course they're going to remember it because it's going to be catchy.
Yeah.
And so then they're going to be able to sing a Bible story and commit that to memory via song.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So that's this whole new level of learning that comes out of these series. And a reviewer mentioned audiobooks too. So are they all available in audio?
They are, and then that's been super fun. I actually have gone
that's right.
in.
You're reading them.
I'm reading them.
Yes.
Yeah, brought to you by the author. Yeah, so it's that buttery baritone I got going on here.
Very opposite.
Definitely not my Larry voice. Yeah. Exactly. But no, it's been fun reading the books because Oasis Audio, who does the audio production, they're up in Chicago. I've gone up there for the first 4 books, and then the other 2 we did down here in Nashville. But it's just so much fun reading through the books, and it's a different thing from doing character work. You have to kind of characterize the voices without going
being
full into character. Yeah. So it's been fun. So it's I have a lot of fond memories of reading to my kids. When they were little. I did the Narnia series with both my kids. I did Lord of the Rings with my son.
Yeah.
And it was all, and loved Dr. Seuss and other books, and so it's always I've always loved that, and it's been so much fun to be able to do this on these
now
books
you
as
get
well.
to read to everybody's kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Is everyone okay down there? Bob the squirrel called in Squirrel from the large walnut tree just outside Michael's window. Bob, along with his wife Mary and their friend Larry, had just met Merle and Pearl earlier that day. "We're fine, Bob, thank you," Pearl chirped in Squirrel. "Just trying to figure out what it was that ran into our window. I think it might belong to those guys," Bob pointed from his perch on high. Some distance off stood Walnut Creek Elementary's resident bully, 4th grader Edgar, along with his 2 minions, Pete and Bruce. "They've been decorating your home," Mary added, popping out from a knothole in the tree. "It's lovely the way toilet paper blows in the wind." Edgar realized he'd been spotted. "Give me my drone back, Gomez," he hollered. "Not when you're using it to TP my house," Michael shouted back. The porch lights clicked on, and the voice of Dr. Gomez rang out. "You, boys, what are you doing?" This sent the 3 delinquents scrambling. In his panic, Edgar dropped the drone's remote control on the lawn. "That's right, run away," Michael called out, "and don't come back." "Michael," his dad's voice came from the porch, "please clean this mess up after school tomorrow." "Oh, man," Michael replied. "Shh." Merle, still half asleep, said again.
And it is great for, when you're in the car or traveling. One very long drive home from Florida, I opened up Bob Goff's Love Does. Well, I was reading it to myself, and then I got to one chapter that was so funny, and I knew my boys would love it, so I read it out loud. And then they loved it so much that I started at the beginning and read the entire book out loud. So it's
nice.
Much better if you have this digitally on audio or a CD or however you listen than, mama being hoarse by the time you get home.
Well, yeah, and you can edit it, so obviously there's always, you're never going to read everything perfect all the way through one time.
Yes.
So it's just nice to be able to go and say, "Oh, I messed up that line. Let's redo it."
Yes, I found that we just recorded our first audiobook, and I found that we were editing Doug Powell and I. Plug for the big book of Bible questions. But I found that we would edit it instead of reading what was on the page. We would edit it to say what we wanted as we were recording. So
it sounds better like this.
Yeah, but
the kids are going to be confused.
Yeah, that doesn't really work when you're doing an audiobook. But anyway, so are there more there are 6 books out right now. Are there more in the works?
There are, Amy. I'm so glad you asked. Yeah. So just signed a contract with Tyndale for 6 more books. So for books 7 through 12 in the series.
6 more. Awesome.
Yeah. So, and it's one of those things where I'm so happy and joyful to, have gotten the deal and, continue the series.
But
and
now you got to write them.
It's followed by a quick, it's followed immediately by terror.
By a panic attack. Yeah.
Wait a minute. I've got to write how many more books? So
I know the feeling.
Yeah. So that's fun. So I'm kind of already starting. I've sort of laid out kind of the general world of the next, because that was part of the pitch, of what these next books are going to look like. And I don't want to give that away yet, and so don't blow it for people still reading the first 6 books. But yeah. So I'm starting in on that. And it's going to be a fun next year as I dive into these books.
Yeah, well, and I won't make you tell us, but I was kind of hoping the Squirrels would go back and that Dad would go on another archaeological expedition, and the Squirrels would go back and show the boys around their hometown. And
well, you're not. You're well. I don't want to give anything away, but great minds.
And so. And I hate to even ask, but what else are you working on? Or is this it? Are we just trying to get these next 6 books out? Or do you have other projects you're working on?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And can I ask?
Yeah. Well, sure. I've been working on writing more VeggieTales.
Yay!
So that's been fun. So, yeah. So TBN has licensed VeggieTales from Universal, who owns the intellectual property for VeggieTales. So Phil and I have been back writing and doing voices,
that's awesome.
So that's been so much fun. And that first episode came out.
The Christmas
episode, that came out, and there's 25 more that will be released. Yeah, there's a lot.
I was worried about your 6 books, but 25.
Yeah, and so
do you get to write and voice on all of those or some of them?
Well, I voice on all of them.
Good.
Yeah, because Larry, Jean-Claude, and Jerry are my kind of my 3 main voices. I've probably Phil's been doing a lot of writing. I've probably be about five of the 26 scripts.
Yeah.
And then working with other writers that we've worked with over the years with VeggieTales too, as well. So it's been so much fun. So I've been doing that. And then, of course, I'm a professor at Lipscomb University. So check us out online, kids, if you're interested in film and animation. But that's been wonderful. I've loved teaching, loved being in the classroom, loved the idea that, having spent a career as a storyteller, that I can now help pass that on to the next generation.
And I'm guessing a lot of ideas are sparked in the classroom too. You're like teaching them, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and then you're like, oh, I need to do this.
Well, yeah, and then just seeing the talent as well, and seeing like this, it's like, wow, I got to stay on my game because these kids are sharp.
Exactly, and so, there's a whole new brand of humor coming out of the kids. It's not my brand of humor. My kids will send me memes, and I'm like, how is this funny? It's so random.
See, I got to say, I'm probably my humor brain is still stuck in that era. So yeah, so it's like I'm right with them. So, but no, and that's so much fun. And so so just been working. Those are the 3 major things that I'm working on. being a professor, working on VeggieTales, working on Squirrels, and then some, other little things here and there. But I just feel really, I just feel, really, really blessed to be able to do what I do.
Yeah.
And it's, being able to, tell stories that help parents pass on biblical values to their kids. It's just, it's what I want to do. So it's fantastic.
Yeah. And we appreciate your doing that. I know I raised my kids on VeggieTales, and I share all of, your Squirrels books and stuff with the nephews. And so we need this good quality stuff that engages our kids. And, there's a lot of junk out there. So when we can find, treasures among the junk, we certainly hold those close.
Oh, thank you, Amy.
So where can listeners connect with you and find all of these good things that you're working on for their own kiddos?
Yeah, so I'm on, I do a Instagram. I've ventured into the world of Instagram at Mike.Nawrocki, so you can find me there. And then I've also got a author's Facebook page, Mike Nawrocki, so you can look me up there. I do have a website, but, I'm really, I've been too busy to do anything with it. So my website has said coming soon for the past 4 years.
I saw that last night.
So I gotta get on the ball there. But Instagram.
You need to add a parenthetical thing, not so soon.
Not so soon. Yeah. And of course, with us, with the Bible for Kids website, folks can come on there and connect with, and kind of get links to the books and all that sort of stuff. But the books are available on Amazon, so you can find them there as well. Yeah.
And on Tyndale.com, like I said, guys, you can see the entire first chapter of all of the books on Tyndale. And we're working on building up the Bible for Kids website where you can find resources on both of our books there on the BibleForKids.com. So be checking that out. We'll always be updating that. Well, thank you, Mike. I know you're stuck in the studio with me anyway, but thanks for just, filling us in on what you're doing, what you're working on. I know people are always excited to hear that. And I guess that will be it for today's episode of the Bible for Kids podcast.